many people out there, either consciously or unconsciously, seek their own salvation. They seek a way out of the suffering, out of all the horrors of the world. They might stumble upon texts that talk about the reincarnation, for example, which even in the Bible has been spoken about. But in the Bible it had seemed to be more mysterious in how they approach this subject. In fact, I was even told, and I read in some material not that long ago, but sadly I didn't make any specific notes on it because it was already making sense to me, but I realized perhaps it would have been better if I could directly find the piece of literature that mentioned that the Bible has been edited heavily, and that actually doesn't really seem that strange to me either. And this all happened like in the year 400 or something, 300, like it's been a long time ago, but at least there are claims out there that the Bible is not 100% the original text that it used to be, because in it there was also mention of reincarnation more clearly. And apparently for some reason the kings and leaders of the world at the time thought it was too majestic and perhaps terrifying for humanity to know this, because that would mean that they could no longer hold a grasp over the population, which in a way it still happens in dictatorships as well currently in the world. In countries where there is dictatorship, you see, they're not really allowed to know anything beyond what their leader is supposedly claiming to be the truth, but even those people can know beyond what lies beyond those terms of their leader. See, this all depends on spiritual awareness and whether you're developing it or whether you're completely ignorant of it and unable to work with it consciously and deliberately. Now, reincarnation is a subject that is of great interest to many people out there, and they might wonder, how can I stop reincarnating? Like, they can sense that they want to go beyond this whole cycle of reincarnating over and over again in a physical life. Now, the way to go beyond reincarnation initially seems pessimistic to people who perhaps lack a certain spiritual awareness themselves. But I would say that to go beyond reincarnation is a wonderful thing, even though it seems pessimistic if it's not grasped properly. Because what you need to do is to become desireless for things of this world and physical reality as you experience it. Now, if you become desireless, if you no longer really feel any need to stick around, it can be a good thing. But again, we want to do this in wisdom. It doesn't mean that you take your own life, because that also is a state of ignorance more often than not. I know that in some Buddhist texts it has been said that suicide can only be considered perhaps a good thing if one has been enlightened before they do it, where they truly have evolved spiritually far beyond the ego and this physical phenomena that we are experiencing. So basically, it is literally breaking yourself free from it deliberately at that point. But I think in Hinduism what is even more fascinating is just simply to reach the state where you could leave this world at command, if that is what you truly want to do at that point. So you evolve spiritually so much that you can actually lay down and just leave and never come back. That is a form of suicide as well if you think about it, but that seems to be way more based from a state of actual spiritual wisdom and power, instead of forcefully shutting down the body through a violent, destructive manner like it normally occurs for people that take this route. So in your case, if you've ever wondered, how can I stop reincarnating, because perhaps you have also sensed in your heart somewhere that you want to go beyond the physical realm, that you no longer want to deal with the duality of physicality, because that is inherent in it. Good and bad is part of the physical realm. Well, again, as we stated, you have to become desireless. You have to really make peace first and foremost with yourself, learn to perceive beyond the ego that you seemingly are, and then also learn to actually embrace and accept that nothing here can make you truly fulfilled and happy. So everything we do, physically speaking, is in the hopes of it making us happy. We try to pursue stuff in the hopes that we will somehow enjoy our lives more. But ultimately, because of the transient nature of this reality, we also end up losing it. So if we keep going on this path, we basically are on an endless chase for fulfillment that keeps us stuck also in a reincarnation cycle, pretty much. But if you can become desireless, it allows you to evolve beyond it and break away from it into the transcendental reality of spirit that lies beyond it. But you see, if people live and die with great desires for physical things and obsession for physical things, they keep themselves locked into physical reality and simply are reincarnating over and over again in some sort of pursuit of finding fulfillment in a transient realm. You see, all spiritual texts ultimately lead us, the individual, to truly start to believe and desire God itself, which is the transcendental reality. God's being is transcendental, which means you go beyond the physical and you start perceiving and experiencing the unity that lies beyond all of creation. You start to desire, we could call it a divine desire for God and God alone, with the knowledge and knowingness within your soul, through intuitive realization that by doing so, it has been the only thing you'd ever want, you ever needed all along. So, if you're, for example, single and not in a relationship, many people out there are very lonely and sad over that fact. They really feel sad that they can't find a partner, for example. But I would say, from my perspective, that the only partner you'll ever need is God. So for me personally, there's no need to be lonely and sad over not having a wife. Like, this is really not something that I feel sad about. Yet others would feel greatly sad, right? And the reason why we could feel sad is, again, because we're trying to seek the fulfillment through the physical realm only. But yet at the same time, I'm also not saying that you should not desire what you currently desire. Because the thing is, if you desire things physically speaking, then right now in your journey, you should try and fulfill as many as you can, so that you could hopefully make a logical conclusion for yourself that the transient nature of this reality is indeed not the place where you could find the supposed eternal joy and happiness of the soul. Not until you come to that conclusion for yourself would it actually make sense to work through the physical desires that you still might have. So for me, that has also occurred rapidly throughout this current journey of mine on planet Earth, is that initially, even though I was very spiritually aware already as a child and worked almost unconsciously with my own intuition and through meditation, stuff like that, I was doing stuff pretty unconsciously, only realizing over time that it's not really the norm for most people to allow themselves to be guided through intuition and stuff like that. I would still seek my own fulfillment through physical means for the most part as well, because we tend to be raised in a world where this is the main objective. If you just look at it objectively, you can see that people are raised and therefore trained to seek all their fulfillment physically speaking, and the spiritual, that the things of God, the things that might lie beyond physicality, the mysteries of the universe that go beyond physicality, well, they're hardly ever addressed. But yet people individually might have fascination about it. They might be curious about it, but they don't know really how to go about it, because when they look around them, there's hardly anyone really using their time to consider these things for themselves. That still seems to be the minority. But as I kept pursuing physical goals myself, at times where I thought like that would be really amazing to achieve, then I achieved many of the things that I thought would make my life much greater. Well, yeah, they made me happier, of course. They gave me a sense of joy and fulfillment as I achieved certain goals, but then not long after, I also realized like there's no permanent happiness in them at all, and I seek this eternal joy. Like intuitively, I already knew I'm seeking God, but yet I could not really clearly perceive it simultaneously until I started to work for myself and conclude, hey, all these physical goals, no matter what I achieve on Earth, since one day this must all come to an end. I will end up in the grave with my body, at least. This body will end up in the grave is a better way of putting it. But my soul goes on. That means that I cannot really, if I'm smart, focus all my attention on the physical goals. And that doesn't mean that I don't have any goals either, because as long as I'm physically here, we are just confronted with having to do stuff. But I realize the more I practice the presence of God within my heart, the more I practice keeping myself spiritually aware, in spite of the physical activities and things that happen and occur and that I have to do while I'm here physically also, well, the more peaceful and joyous I can remain within the depths of my being. And then when this body finally passes away, is returned back to the earth, returns back to dust, then the joy of the soul is something you carry beyond the grave. And yet sadly, many people, they don't really go beyond their grave with a spirit of joy. They might go beyond the grave with a spirit of desperation, like, oh, I'm losing all my earthly stuff, and they feel very sad about it. All the money, maybe they've made millions or billions and they all left behind. Suddenly you let it all go. You're forced to leave it all behind, and then you might feel sad in spirit, and therefore you reincarnate again, because you keep believing that the only way to truly feel fulfilled is through physical means alone. But if you want to go beyond reincarnation, you start to realize that is not true. The transcendental reality of spirit is where true joy, bliss, love and fulfillment lies, because that is where unity resides, and through unity you're one with everything, and therefore you cannot really desire anything in particular. You no longer need to desire anything in particular because you're already one with everything and it's all at your commands. To awaken as a son or daughter, child of God, means that God will give into your hands the ability to manifest whatsoever you desire in the transcendental reality of spirit itself. So you can have anything you desire instantly. You can just enjoy whatever you want. Because of your unity with God, you no longer feel the need to seek it physically in a transient realm of time and space where everything comes and goes slowly, but you see, it is born, it grows, and then it dies. See, that's the cycle of physicality. We're all here, born physically speaking, growing up, and then one day physically we die again. And as long as we're sort of hypnotized by this realm, we keep wanting to go back, either consciously or unconsciously. But if the great call comes from the depths of your heart to go home, to truly go home to spirit, to the Garden of Eden, well, then you'll break free from this cycle. That to me is just one way of looking at how to go beyond reincarnation. And it's one that I'm working on for myself, and that I figured would be interesting to share with you today, perhaps because some people out there truly are also interested in how they could go beyond it. They've seen the state of this world in general, they have some sense of what it's about, and they realize I no longer want to be truly stuck here or part of it anymore. Well, again, remember, the way to go beyond it is to become desireless. And the way to become desireless is if you first can clearly make a logical decision in your consciousness that it's true that since everything is transient, there can't be real long-term fulfillment in physicality alone. And then it makes sense to become desireless, to let go of your desires, to make peace with them, to realize, okay, all these things that I want to achieve physically, I can achieve them spiritually as well in a transcendental reality already. So I don't really need to work for them for them at all anymore at that point. This is also why the statement to come eat and drink without price. Yeah, it can be taken physically in some area of the world where they might allow that, but spiritually speaking, in the kingdom of God, in the Garden of Eden, etc., all the symbolism behind all this, it's true, you don't need to pay money then to eat and drink. In fact, spiritually speaking, you don't really need food and drink as you normally do it. Your soul, your spiritual body, operates on pure energy, and that energy comes straight from God. So therefore you can come and eat and drink without price. Like, God is not asking you to pay money to exist, does he? But physically speaking, in this world we are demanded to pay money, which is a physical thing, in order to have a house, a roof over our head. Well, the more you obsessed you become with physicality, the more you remain stuck here then, because you allowing yourself to remain hypnotized by it, to remain bonded, attached to this. So what are we really talking about here? Well, even though we have obligations physically speaking, nobody on this planet can stop us from expanding and evolving our minds beyond physicality, and as we do so, we grow, we evolve out of it over time. If you've been working on this through your physical days on Earth, then the moment you pass away, you will know that you don't have to come back. It can become a conscious decision at that point. But if you've not been working on any of this, like so many sadly, where you just go along with the hypnotism on physicality and you never take time for spirituality at all to really grasp your own soul, nature and unity with God, well then, the moment you pass away, it's kind of like when you fall asleep at night and are dreaming about things that occurred during your daytime. So your mind is still completely hooked into physicality. But if it is unhooked, you start to experience all kinds of wonderful revelations through the dream realms, and then ultimately beyond the grave to the higher realms of God itself. And then you no longer truly desire to want to come back, to find fulfillment through physical means. At that point you reach a state ultimately where you can consciously decide to come back to Earth for a specific purpose, perhaps to guide humanity with spiritual insights. But that is totally up to you then, because you have overcome the desires that kept you stuck in the cycle of reincarnation. Really contemplate this message deeply for yourself if this is something you're interested in figuring out more keenly in your own journey.